From the moment Finn's DHI entered the Utilidor tunnels, he had a bad feeling. It didn't come from anything obvious. There were still a few cast members milling around. Most of them were women whose costumes required wigs, makeup, and extra attention. The wigs had to come off and be put away in the wig shop, the makeup removed, the costumes hung up and put away. But there were also other workers driving the golf carts laden with bottled water, soda, sweatshirts, boxes of 3D glasses, popcorn, costumes, books, pins, lanyards, cotton candy, DVDs, and all the hundreds of items for sale in the park's various gift shops. It all moved through the Utilidor, some of it well past the hour of the gates closing. Finn and Philby, shimmering slightly under the fluorescent lights, were greeted with nods and smiles. The DHIs were generally well liked by cast members, and though it should have occurred to some of them that they never saw the DHIs in the Utilidor, instead the two were met with a joyful surprise, and they actually felt compelled to wave to several of those who were most eager to greet them. Philby, who managed to keep far too many facts in his head, led Finn to the right at the first intersection, and to the left at the next. He then waved Finn across the hall, and they busied themselves at a bulletin board, standing with their backs to an unmarked door. Finn recognized the door from an earlier visit to the computer room.
Our problem now is that the door will be locked.
Which is why I came along. You tell me when, and I'll do it.
And if there are people inside, how are you going to explain that?
If there are still people inside, which I doubt since there's no light coming out from under the door, and they see me, it won't be me doing the explaining, right? They're the ones controlling the computers, including the DHI server. It isn't shut down, or we wouldn't be here right now. But we don't know what the software does, how it deals with us once the park is closed. We probably aren't supposed to be here, not at this hour, so I imagine my showing up will surprise them just a little bit. All we can do is try it and see what they do. If they head for the keyboard, I'll know we're in trouble.
If they shut down the server, the return button won't work. It won't just be you and me. All of us will be trapped in the syndrome. All of us will be lying in our beds at home like we're half dead.
We're either doing this, or we're not. It's a little late to be debating the merits of the plan. Forget us, forget the syndrome, think of Wayne. Think of Jess's dream, or premonition, or whatever it is that Jess has. Wayne's in trouble, and he needs us. End of story.
Philby looked over at Finn and nodded.
You're right.
I know I'm right.
Okay, so do it.
I'm going to do it now.
So why aren't you moving?
Because now you've scared me. I mean, what happens if there are people in there?
I thought we just got past that.
I thought so too.
Finn turned around and crossed the wide tunnel to the door on the opposite side. He paused there in front of the unmarked door. A pair of voices came and went at the far end of the tunnel they were in. He knew he mustn't be going into this room, and so he waited to make sure the voices weren't coming toward them. But there was more to it than that. He also stopped there to clear his head. He forced his fear into a tiny box at the back of his mind. He closed the top of that box and he locked it. He washed all concern and all sensations from his body, taking a deep, cleansing breath and feeling his connection to his senses expelled with his exhalation, even though left him. So he felt that he existed in an ether, a fragile place where he wasn't even Finn any longer. He wasn't even sure he was, that he existed at all. He was a bundle of jumping atoms, light generated by a series of computer-controlled projectors. If he could become pure light, without thought and without form or shape, no physical barrier could stop him. He imagined the train coming down the tunnel, and he stepped forward and passed right through the door into the humming room on the other side. The light from his own projection created a glow in the otherwise dim room. He looked left, no one at the desk there, right? Row after row of shelving lined up in stacks like a library. The shelves were not filled with books, but with computer servers, network hubs, and switching, terabyte hard drives, routers, and thousands of flashing, colorful LEDs. It was all neat and organized with labels attached to each shelf below a device. Old McDaniel's farm read a computer printout hanging like a sign on the end cap of one of the stacks. A server farm, a computer nerd's paradise. Slowly, Finn allowed his thoughts to flow again. His senses came back online, and he not only processed cognitively, but he felt his fingers and toes tingle. He turned and reached for the doorknob. His hand went right through the door. He withdrew it and closed his eyes, trying to speed himself back to a less pure condition, where his body would be more than light. He hadn't told any of the others, but this transition had become increasingly difficult for him. He could easily, perhaps too easily, transport himself into the state of pure DHI. All clear, he called it. A state in which he possessed no material quality, in which he was capable of walking through walls or on top of water. But the way back to his human self was sometimes harder. It occasionally took him more time to transition back to being part DHI, part human. He wasn't sure when that scale had tipped, but it had. He didn't know what it meant, but knew it meant something. He tried the handle again, and this time it turned, but he looked down at his own hand as if it belonged to someone else, and maybe it did. Philby came through quickly.
Jeesh, what took you so long?
Finn shut and locked the door behind them.
Heaven.
Philby spread his arms as he faced the stack of servers. Finn's primary job was to get them in and out of the locked room, a job half accomplished. His other job, checking the maintenance records, would have to wait. Philby searched the aisles, row after row of servers, inspecting the labels taped beneath each black brick. Unlike Finn, he didn't seem the least bit intimidated by the maze of wires and display of blinking lights. He located a vertical column of 6 machines, and a keyboard and screen that accessed them. Within minutes, he'd removed the portable hard drive and was downloading the data from the soundstage B chute. He typed frantically, at a speed Finn had trouble believing.
Done a little bit of this, have you?
For me, this is like a violinist playing a stratosphere.
Stradivarius.
Yeah, whatever. Just like that. I dream of messing with this stuff. For most companies, it would be a major deal to have one of these SGIs. I'm looking at 6 right here. 4 more, a couple rows behind us. They've got everything in here. Solaris, Red Hat, Linux. All the top of the line Macs. For all I care, you can just leave me in here.
Don't get too carried away, okay? You're freaking.
The girls are downloading. It's going to take me a while to try to find that Easter egg of Wayne's, the remote.
And the curfew limits? How about you lift those first?
I've got to do this in the order I've got to do it. But yes, I'll lift the midnight curfew if possible.
I knew you'd say something like that.
Maintenance! Hang on a minute.
He led Finn to a computer terminal in the next row. On the screen was a familiar layout.
Is that VMK?
Disney's online virtual kingdom had been shut down over a year earlier. Finn had missed going on the site.
VMN. Actually, Virtual Maintenance Network. It's just like it. That's why it'll be easy for you.
He worked a boy avatar up a ladder, through a door, and into a tunnel. At the other end, a door came closed behind the avatar.
Okay, you're in.
Finn's avatar faced a large screen listing all kinds of locations within Epcot. attractions, foreign countries, buildings, restaurants, even a graphic labeled pyrotechnics.
Start with the obvious things like electrical and phone. You're looking for junction boxes, places all the wires and pipes come together. Those might be actual rooms in the real Epcot, utility rooms where they might have put Wayne. There will be a code at the bottom of each of those kinds of places. Write down the code. I could probably figure out pretty closely where it is inside the park.
He took off, back to his own aisle. They talked through the gaps in the stack that separated them.
How are you doing?
Getting the hang of it.
Finn moved his avatar through the puzzle of colorful tubes, ladders, and pipes.
What is this exactly?
The maintenance guys created a virtual world that would let them fix a lot of stuff remotely. Wayne knew about it.
Wayne knows everything.
Talking about Wayne made Finn miss him all the more. He found an intersection of purple and blue tubes. There was a pulsing code beneath the box where they met, just as Philby had said there might be. He wrote it down. He moved his avatar in front of a graphic, a door, and then forward. The door opened and the screen changed to put Finn inside a small room where the various colored tubes terminated in boxes on the walls. The code below one of these boxes was flashing red and blue.
Is it okay if I try to open the box?
Go for it.
But Finn hesitated even so. Philby was not bashful when it came to computers. Finn used the mouse to move over to the box, and then right-clicked, bringing up a menu. Open, remove, off, and report were the only highlighted menu choices. The rest were grayed out. Report was pulsing. Finn clicked on it. A pop-up window zoomed open and the lines of code scrolled, pausing briefly as they filled the window. Each paused, but seconds before they began scrolling rapidly up. Finn clicked on one of the lines to stop the scrolling. Most of the words had been condensed, so that power was written as PWR and temperature as TMP. He studied the strings of code and numbers, then tried to make sense of the time code that ran on the left.
I've got something here.
Write it down. I've hit a line of code that could be Wayne's Easter egg. It requires a password to edit the code, which could be why the guys repairing the code didn't remove it.
No, I mean, I've really got something here.
He wrote down two of the lines verbatim.
I think, if I'm right,
He backed the avatar out of this wall box, then out of the room in order to take a wider view of the overall screen. Several of the codes beneath various boxes were pulsing, but not all, by any means.
I'm busy here.
Finn drilled down into a similar box, entering a room that also showed a pulsing code and then a junction box with the flashing label. By the time he opened up the pop-up window, he'd convinced himself.
Temperature drops.
what's that?
Finn took notes furiously. The pop-up window appeared to be an error log. The scrolling lines, a nearly minute-by-minute cataloging of significant variations in temperature swings, all recorded in centigrade. Temperature drops, he noted. In each case, the temperature had fallen dramatically before it slowly climbed up again. He backed out of the error log and found his way to a wider view that showed the tubes and wires. There were 6 codes pulsing. He wrote them down and circled them repeatedly so he wouldn't forget them. At the bottom of the screen, Finn saw an identifying marker change. Besides currently online, 1 flashed and then changed to 2.
Philby? I've got a visitor.
Philby didn't hesitate this time. He hurried to Finn's side and ran a finger along beneath the cast member monitor line.
Dang, okay, we need to find an exit.
An exit? Can't we just close the session?
It doesn't exactly work like that. Once you're in this world, you're in it.
Sounds familiar.
The main problem being, as long as your avatar's online, they may be able to determine which station we're using.
What? So get me offline.
I just told you, it doesn't work like that. It's a virtual world, and maybe...
He sprinted around the stack and into the next aisle and began tugging on cords and trying to sort through the massive bundles of multicolored wires. Finn was alongside him now. Philby grabbed and pulled Finn's finger so that it pointed to a particular blue wire. Philby then followed that same wire as it twisted and traveled along the stack to another set of boxes. He pinched a plastic clip and pulled the wire from a box. Together they raced around to the other side. Finn couldn't remember seeing Philby so flustered. He'd been mumbling to himself for the past 30 seconds.
Tracers, user logs, spiders. Not good. Not good.
They reached the terminal Finn had been using. His avatar was gone.
You did it!
No, not really. Not so fast. Not quickly enough.
He sprinted to the next aisle and typed even faster than before, but he kept looking at the room's main door as if he was expecting someone.
What the heck is going on?
You know the wire I disconnected?
Yeah?
You've got to reconnect it.
What?
We can't leave that kind of thing behind. It'll give us away. Don't you get it?
Apparently not. These are computers.
Finn waved for him to give him more, like they were playing a game of charades.
They're self-monitoring. They keep logs of everything they do. Every computer does. These especially so because they're like 10 times more serious than anything you've seen. Our being on here, it's all there. That's not a worry as long as no one goes looking for it.
But now, my avatar... Someone's gonna come looking.
It's possible. That's all I'm saying.
Do they know I was in this room?
By now, it's possible.
So what are we doing here?
Plug that wire back in. I'm wrapping up.
But...
The wire!
Philby yelled. Finn took off, slipped and fell, got to his feet, and found the wire. Philby had reached the door by the time Finn caught up.
Go. Don't wait for me. I'll meet you in the apartment. We left the remote back at the studios, remember? We'll have to go back there to return.
But...
Don't wait for me.
It was Finn's turn to yell. Philby nodded. They unlocked and cracked open the door. Philby peered out.
It's clear.
Finn pushed his DHI out the door. He locked the door from the inside and attempted to calm himself, to clear his mind. His fingers tingled. He stepped forward. He crashed into the door. He was not yet pure DHI, not yet able to pass through the door. The more he thought about someone coming for him, the more difficult it was to make himself clear enough. He debated just leaving the door unlocked, but it was sure to give them away, certain to make them audit the computers and discover the intrusions. He had to do this. He closed his eyes and focused on a song, humming to himself. Out of nowhere, Amanda's face appeared in his imagination. That combination, Amanda in his eyes and the song With You in his ears, and he walked through the door and into the hall, looked both ways. No one was coming. He walked out in no particular hurry, his feet and fingers beginning to tingle again. The song stayed in his head, the image of her in his mind. He felt safe. He felt good. He felt totally confused.
How did you sleep, sweetheart?
Finn's mother asked him the next morning. In the midst of cooking pancakes and bacon, she had her hair pinned up with what looked like a chopstick, her sleeves rolled up past her elbows, and her right hand on the wrong end of a spatula, scraping some of the burnt stuff off the blade with a determined red fingernail.
Okay, I guess.
His knees ached, his head felt fat, and he was beyond thirsty. He swilled down a glass of orange juice and went to the fridge to pour himself another one.
Anything fun going on at school today?
No.
Well, there must be something.
No, it's boring. Same as always.
But you like school.
Sometimes.
Then let's make today a good one of those times.
He could have bitten her. She came out with lines like this that didn't even sound like her. She was probably reading another book like Parenting Your Young Teenage Monster or B-Teen The Terror. She tended to quote whatever advice she was getting, whether from a friend, a book, or a podcast.
You lose any more weight, Mom, and you're gonna disappear.
I'm just keeping fit. Fit it is.
Not too long on that side, okay?
The facing upside was the color of coffee grounds. She was an okay cook most of the time, though she could trash the entire kitchen just making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. There was currently not an open square inch on the countertop, unless you counted the half-acre of spilled pancake flour or the used tea bag with the Lake Earl Grey surrounding it.
Disney sent us a letter about the DHIs being installed on the cruise ships. They're still working on that.
That would be pretty good.
That would be very good. For your college fund, especially.
You know, Wayne,
Yes?
he's missing.
The words came out of Finn's mouth, and he wondered exactly where he thought he was going with this.
Missing?
Never mind.
He'd wished there was a rewind button for real life, like Adam Sandler's in Click. He could have put it to good use.
Missing how?
As in, no one can find him.
There's no reason to be fresh, young man.
She delivered the pancakes. He considered asking her for a jackhammer, but worried she might send him to school with no breakfast at all.
That's none of your concern.
I know.
Finn,
I know, Mother. I get it.
tell me you won't get involved in something like that.
Something like what?
Don't avoid the question.
Don't jump to conclusions.
He wouldn't lie to his parents. He would and could stretch the truth to the cosmic edge of reality, but not tell an outright lie.
Should I call someone? About Wayne, I mean?
I don't know. Who would you call?
I'm asking you.
No clue.
But you're worried about him.
I like the old dude. I figure he's just taking a vacation or something. Maybe he's on one of those cruise ships trying to set us up, like you said. Maybe that's all it is. If he was on one of those ships, we'd never know about it.
Well, then I helped solve it.
She was watching way too much Desperate Housewives. She was beginning to sound like those women.
Whatever.
You haven't brought Amanda by in a long time.
He'd brought her by exactly once, and one time she'd come on her own.
So?
So you're welcome to do so anytime you want. We could have her for dinner.
No, thanks.
Or a movie or something.
Yeah, right.
The pancakes tasted pretty good, given that he had to break an outside shell to eat them.
How are they?
He spoke through a full mouth, avoiding the second outright lie of the morning.
I don't want you worried about Wayne.
I shouldn't have said anything.
Older people. Well, sometimes they need a visit away from home or fresh air or even a day or two in the hospital. But I'm sure he's fine.
That's not exactly reassuring. What do you mean, the hospital?
I shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it in the way it sounded. I'm sure he's with friends somewhere.
Enemies, more like it.
He told his pancakes, quietly enough that she couldn't hear.
Your cell phone buzzed.
What? When?
While you were sleeping. Just now. A text, I think. A short buzz.
He'd left it charging the night before amid the sea of wires and wall warts at the end of the kitchen counter. He extracted it and unlocked the keypad.
Hey, where's the rat?
You will not call your sister derogatory names. Not in this house, young man.
Student council? Dad dropped her?
Uh-huh.
Jess crossed over last night. She finished her dream. Call me, Philby.
Anything important?
Huh?
Finn stuffed the phone into his pocket.
No, nothing. Just stuff. Boy stuff, you know?
Boy stuff as in boy and girl stuff?
It was all his mother could think about. He was supposed to be the one thinking about girls, but he could have sworn that she spent 10 times more time than he did thinking about all that stuff. He barely thought about girls at all, except Jez and Amanda, and they didn't count. Not exactly, anyway.
Just stuff.
No more of that Kingdom Keepers nonsense. We're clear on that, young man, yes?
You've made yourself very clear on that.
3 in one morning. That was close to a record. He didn't want to push it. She was the one who always told him to quit while he's ahead.
I think I'll ride my bike, if it's okay. Maybe I'll walk Amanda home today, if you wouldn't mind.
As expected, she practically exploded.
Mind? Why would I mind? What a lovely idea, Finn. You could ask her for dinner if you wanted.
How could he bring a girl home for dinner with his mother analyzing every word spoken, every gesture? She treated him like a lab rat.
Maybe so.
He didn't want to hurt her feelings. He'd just brought himself at least 2 hours after school, but he walked calmly to his bike, not wanting to appear too anxious. He successfully flew beneath his mother's radar. He pedaled as fast as his bike would carry him. Jess had crossed over, confirming that Philby had successfully installed her, and presumably Amanda too, onto the DHI server. Their mission at the studios had been a success. She'd apparently finished her dream of Wayne while crossed over. He couldn't wait to see whatever she sketched. He one-handed the bike and called Philby, reaching him on the second ring. School could seem endless. Days could stretch out for an eternity, as if someone had put the weights on all the hands of every clock, slowing them down. This must be how prisoners look at clocks, Finn thought, the days stretching out impossibly long, compounding their incarceration. He felt like a prisoner himself, knowing what lay ahead when the bell rang and the doors opened. Amanda was waiting for him at the bottom of the steps.
Jess crossed over last night.
I heard. And you?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you'd know, believe me. But that's strange. Was it into Epcot?
Yes,
Then Philby got it right.
I suppose.
He walked his bike, Amanda alongside him.
I could sit on the bar, you know. It will be faster.
Finn's throat tightened. If she sat on the bike's top bar, it was going to be cozy. Real cozy.
What about your bag?
He kept looking for an excuse to prevent this from happening.
I can put it with yours, unless you don't want me to.
No, that's okay. Sure, I guess.
He held the bike for her, steadying it. She slipped onto the bar, held the handlebars, and waited for Finn to mount the saddle. Amanda was tall, and it suddenly felt as if she were sitting in his lap. Her left shoulder was touching his chest, and her long dark hair tickled his chin.
I've got a better idea.
Their faces nearly touching, his voice sounded like air leaking from a balloon.
Why don't you take the saddle?
I'm good here.
No, I think it would be safer with you on the seat. I can stand on the pedals.
A moment later, rearranged on the bike, they were heading down the sidewalk, shouting at students to get out of their way. Amanda tried to steady herself by gripping the saddle, but gave up after a block and placed her hand on Finn's hips. He stopped pedaling, allowing the bike to glide, then drew a deep breath and continued riding. 5 minutes stretched to 10. She talked to pass the time.
When she was crossed over, she walked around the park. It was nighttime, of course, and there wasn't anyone around for the most part. She saw some movement across the lake, and she hid out of sight. She said it was kind of creepy, being there all alone.
I'll bet it was. The Magic Kingdom's the same way.
She felt drawn to certain attractions, but that's how she is. All sorts of stuff happens to her, and a lot of it can't be explained.
How did she cross back?
I have no idea.
What time was it?
She woke up in bed just before midnight.
That was us. That was when Philby and I, and the others, crossed back. We met up in the apartment, but it doesn't make much sense that she crossed over. We always have been together for that to happen.
But she wasn't one of her dreams right then. Maybe that had something to do with it. One minute, she was walking past France. The next, she was in her bunk. But she had the picture in her head. A perfect picture of Wayne. The same dream she had before. Only this time, it was all there. At least she thinks it's everything.
Finn glided to a stop in front of the frozen marble ice cream shop. Philby was waiting at a table inside with the strawberry concoction in front of him. It occurred to Finn that he'd never seen any of the DHI's houses except Mapex, not counting the church Amanda and Jez had squatted in for a few months. He had no idea or even where some of his closest friends lived.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey,
She went up to the counter and ordered a mocha mini with graham crackers, M&Ms, and chocolate syrup, and returned with 2 spoons, handing one to Finn. He regarded the spoon carefully. Sharing an ice cream was something he'd never done with a girl. It felt to him like some kind of contract, some kind of commitment, and he was leery of entering into it too quickly.
don't worry. My spoon won't touch your side.
She spoke in an openly mocking tone. Philby arched his eyebrows and kept his mouth occupied with his strawberry whatever.
I didn't say anything.
Eat.
He stabbed into the ice cream recklessly, took a spoonful, and hummed as the combination hit his taste buds.
Whoa!
Yeah, I thought you'd like it.
Double whoa.
It's a cryptogram.
He pushed a photocopy from the page in Jez's diary in front of Finn. It showed an old guy that looked surprisingly like Wayne sitting in a chair. On the wall behind him was the image of a horse, a pole, and in the distance a mountain and some trees. Across it was a written string of letters and numbers. MKPFP, IFP, TDIEPR, VKPFP, RMIFR, CQWM, JFQV, HT, 2736/2730.
What the?
It's a kind of code.
He is always doing this. Why is nothing ever simple with him?
He's secretive. It's like the stonecutter's quill, only different.
Different how?
That was an anagram. This clearly is not.
None of this is exactly clear to me. He expects us to break it?
But how?
Are we sure this is right?
Jess's dreams are accurate. You know that, Finn. Remember the animal kingdom?
I know, but that was animals. This is... I don't know what this is. Gibberish?
Not exactly gibberish, though it won't be simple to figure out. He's left us a few clues.
More than this?
Within this.
Clues within clues?
Exactly.
He's either way too smart or way too crazy.
A little of both.
What clues? I love puzzles.
These numbers at the end are a clue, but the apostrophe's the biggie.
Yeah, sure. Huge.
He didn't like the way Amanda and Philby were so buddy-buddy.
Break the numbers apart and you get
2736.
27 and 36.
And that's significant because
How many letters are there in the alphabet?
Philby wanted her to think it out for herself.
26. But oh my gosh.
That's big news?
I know that much, but if you add in the 10 numerals, 1 through 0.
Not 0 through 1?
No, I don't think so. You'll see why.
These two were speaking a foreign language.
Back up.
By including the number 36, he's telling us that he intended 10 characters, or numbers, past the end of the alphabet. So 27 is...
The numeral 1
and 36...
is 0. 1 followed by a 0 is 10.
Yes. Altogether, it's a date, I'd think. 10/14, October 14th.
Whoa, but that's like, what, 2 days from now?
Exactly. And since that date makes at least some sense in terms of the code, it shows us he was using a system.
Where each letter and each numeral represents a number, or in this case, of the alphabet, a different letter.
Yes, that's it. A cryptogram.
So another clue is the letter M. We know this because
Because it follows the apostrophe.
So M either represents an S or a T or a D, because those are the only 3 letters that ever follow an apostrophe by themselves, except for M, and I don't think M is likely to be M. Also, it's probably not D, since I bet this message is in the present tense. Apostrophe D would be short for had, the past.
She's fast.
Philby told Finn, who mugged, trying to appear that he was following them.
And where does this get us exactly?
Cryptograms are about patterns. Words follow patterns. Vowels are in certain places in most words. Wayne wouldn't make it ridiculously difficult, just hard enough that the overtakers couldn't understand it when they found it.
He'd have had to actually write on the wall. Otherwise, Jess would not have seen it. Her dreams, her visions, are like snapshots of the future. She wrote down each of these letters. She saw this clearly.
But all we have are a couple of numbers and an S or a T. I don't see how that helps us. Wayne needs us now.
The most common letters are vowels. I'm pretty sure I can decode this. The P's repeat, the I's. Therefore, they're probably vowels. It's going to come together easier than you think. It's like Scrabble in a foreign language.
When?
Finn! He just got it today. It's not that easy.
But I thought we were going after the temperature records. I thought that was the way we decided we might find you know.
Then you want the engineer base.
A woman's voice turned the heads of all 3 kids. Wanda stood there looking down at them.
Where do you come from?
You will need to pay more attention to who's behind you. Who's watching you. I followed you and Amanda from school.
You're freaking me out.
You were so busy getting her onto her bike, you never looked at what was going on around you.
It was true. At the time, Finn hadn't been thinking about anything else.
But the overtakers don't go outside the parks.
They did at least once. She did. I saw her drop Jess off at the car wash that time.
An air-conditioned car.
You don't know that was her.
Sure I do. Sure as I'm sitting here.
I would err on the side of precaution if I were you.
What's the engineer base?
Where you'll get your answers. Data from the studios, Epcot, and the Animal Kingdom are all fed into the central office that's housed in the back lot of the studios. The engineers refer to it simply as the base.
What about the Magic Kingdom?
No, their equipment is older, and with the Utilidor. That park is basically self-contained and self-sufficient when it comes to engineering. But Epcot, yes. If you get into the base, you'll have all the temperature data you want.
It's too risky. We just barely got out of there the last time.
Yes, but the last time you were you, and the studio still had people inside.
Yeah, so?
What if this time you went back as your DHIs at night after it closed?
Same answer, too risky. And complicated. Philby programmed us to cross over into Epcot.
Finn looked at Philby, whose face was all in a knot.
Didn't you?
Not exactly. I opened a back door on the software so I can control it.
Control it how?
The projectors. I can control the DHI projectors from any laptop, any computer. I can decide which park a DHI lands in after crossing over.
Wait a second, I didn't hear about this.
It wasn't like we had a lot of time to talk. I'm pretty sure I can control who crosses over into what park. I turn the projectors off in the parks we don't want to go and leave them on in the one where we do. It's pretty basic.
We can cross over into the studios?
We should be able to cross over into anywhere there are projectors. The two kingdoms, the studios, and Epcot. And it gets better than that.
Meaning?
I think I should be able to toggle our DHIs on and off.
Same question.
It means I can decide who crosses over and who doesn't.
Cannot.
Didn't know I could until I was there debugging, but yeah, I think I can. And there's only one way to find out.
Why do I not like the sound of that?
We just have to make sure that whoever's on the list to go, and one of them has to be able to get to the remote, and there's no return. And I realized that Jess crossed back over from Epcot when we hit the return in the studios. But I think we should count on that always working. It would be better to return all together, like we usually do. We don't want to get someone stuck, as in the syndrome.
This doesn't exactly sound reassuring.
And Wanda. We're going to have to trust Wanda to move the remote for us. It's currently in MK. It'll have to be in the studios if Philby and I are going to get out without having to go all the way over to MK.
I can do that for you.
She pulled up a chair to the table, grabbed a napkin and a pen, and started to draw.
Let me show you where to go once you're inside.
Finn looked over at her, wondering if he could trust this woman with the fob. There was only the one fob as far as he knew. If they ever lost it, there would be no crossing back. Their DHIs would be stuck. Their human selves would be caught in the syndrome. It required an enormous leap of faith. Just the kind of thing Wayne would use to test Finn.
The base is going to have everything you want.